bottom line, is it booming? Is Wall Street booming?
A good first half of the year. And we look carefully about what's happening in Wall Street, big contributor to the revenue, the tax revenue that comes to New York City and New York State. So for the first half of the year, compared to the first half of 2018, up 11% pre-tax profits for the securities industry in New York City, $15 billion. And that's the best in 10 years for first half year performance. But that's only half the year, so we still have a ways to go. We don't have the third quarter numbers in yet, so a lot of indications that we need to be cautious as we head towards the end of the year.
So are you cautious for the second half of the year? Early signs showing it?
Yes. There's a lot happening with the global economy, as you all always report. There is a general view that we're headed into a low return environment. Certainly our perspective as a pension fund investor, we've actually lowered our long-term assumed rate of return because of that issue. We'll see where the bonus pool is headed. Also in terms of employment, at the beginning of the year it looked like they were continuing to add jobs on the street. Well, now it looks like they're shedding jobs. So, we always have to remind everyone Wall Street is still smaller today than it was before the global financial crisis in terms of headcount, but still an outsized contributor to the economy in New York City and New York State.
Have you been impressed with their discipline on compensation?
I think the discipline has improved, and certainly I think there's less risk-taking than there used to be. I think tying compensation and bonuses to long-term results makes more sense. Having more deferred compensation, all of that makes sense. But we'll see what the outcome will be for this year. We saw the bonus pool was down somewhat last year. We also are seeing the set aside for compensation first half of the year down about 1%. So part of how his net revenue is slowing. That's one of the other issues. It's still growing, but slower. How will they continue to be profitable? Keeping down expenses. That will have an impact on compensation, on headcount, so we'll keep a close eye on it.
I wonder as well, though, about what we might not lump in here, private equity, hedge funds, some of the biggest earners and the biggest paychecks, certainly in New York City, that are getting taxed. SALT going away, and just in general, anecdotally, I know guys who leave. They're continuing to go to Florida or other places. Is that an issue when you look at overall revenues?
Oh, I think it has to be. But I think some of the information we have is still more anecdotal than hard data at this point.
But there's a budget shortfall this year, isn't there?
Well, we typically have a structural budget gap, and we're actually the numbers are somewhat holding better than they were at the beginning of the year.
Really?
At least for now. But it's really heading into next year when we start the budget process that'll kick off in January, and there is a structural gap. As you know, it's been reported in the press of late, our Medicaid costs are going up higher than anticipated. So there's a lot in the mix that we have to look at.
How much has SALT hurt, do you think, and will continue to the lack of the deduction?
It's hard to quantify, but there's no doubt that some of the higher earners, that was like the last straw for some of them. I'm always concerned also about the middle class folks. A cap of $10,000 on state and local tax. I live on Long Island.
Right.
$10,000 is not much of a property tax bill, let alone the other taxes. What happens if we start to lose the middle class? And that's the real backbone of our community. So hopefully those efforts in Washington to change some of that.
It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen anytime soon, but, things change in this country. We've learned that very dramatically in recent years, so we'll see.
What about banks' efforts to move their back offices to Austin and Salt Lake? Has the bulk of that been done, do you feel, or is that still
I think so. I think New York is holding pretty steady at this point. And look, we may benefit from what's happening with Brexit, perhaps at London's expense, perhaps at Hong Kong's expense. There may be some actually opportunities there for New York to grow some of those operations.
So what's the industry, though? I mean, financial services has been such an important component of the New York economy, but your point out, in terms of overall percentage of employment, it's not that large. I mean, is Google picking up the slack? Amazon certainly would have. Do the likes of Facebook, all these other, Amazon, even though they didn't open the headquarters, is that where the new jobs are coming from?
There's no doubt the tech sector is growing significantly in New York. Those are good jobs, high-paying jobs. But let's, keep in mind, as we look at it, although in terms of headcount of employment, you're only talking about 5% of the workforce in New York City related to Wall Street, to securities industry. It accounts for 20% of the wage and salary rep. So it has an outsized, those jobs have an outsized impact on our city and state economy. It's why we need New York to continue to be the capital for finance here for the United States and for the world.
Well, Thomas DiNapoli, New York State Comptroller, thanks for joining us today.
Nice to be with you.
Hamilton's buried right nearby. You can go thank him.
I always go by and cross my side.